Welcome back to the channel. This is what we're dealing with. I'm Kendra Morgan Official, and I put out content centered around single eyeshadows, makeup brushes that aren't Morphe, and sunscreen. So if you like that kind of content, make sure you subscribe to my channel. And let's get started. Today I'm going to be reverse duping the vibes of the Mercury Retrograde. And I want to demonstrate whether or not I already owned these shadows before I purchased the palette. Currently the palette is for sale at Sephora for $33.50, and I couldn't resist. I went ahead and picked up the palette because I thought to myself, well, it would be nice to own this palette, but did I really need to buy it, or did I already own the shadows? So we're gonna find out. Okay, here's the first shade that I picked out. It's Fluff Metallic. Now we can get started. So I've got this shade, and then I've got Ultraviolet, which is actually kind of a semi-transparent, and it is much cooler in tone than ColourPop's Fluff Metallic. So I'm going to actually take a look at some of these Makeup Geek shadows. I would say this shadow gives a very similar vibe to this shade right here. But I think Caitlin Rose might also give that vibe. Again, I'm going to do the standout shades because I know that for the most part, these shadows right here, these neutrals, I'm not going to have any problems duping. So I think I'm just going to go for the shades that are, you know, the standout shades. So kind of these in here, this shade right here, this Gold Rush, Supernova, and then maybe Cosmic up here in the corner. And I will look at Utopia, which does seem to be kind of standout. It just looks really nice and contrasting in regards to the row up here where you've got the orange and the purple. I feel like that's just kind of a trick to make you think that the shade is more, you know, than it really is. So here's the shade that we're duping. And then here's the shades that I have in my collection that I just now have taken out. Let me use this shade. This is Plot Twist. None of them give a glittery finish, but if I had to say, I would say this shade right here, which is Caitlin Rose, I believe. It's fairly similar. I'm gonna go ahead and put Caitlin Rose next to Ultraviolet. This shade didn't pass, neither did Plot Twist. Yeah, it's too pastel. There is quite a bit of dimension in this. However, I think the sparkles is what makes it truly unique. And it's something that I don't really have in my collection so far. Okay, so this right here, this Mercury shade, I think it looks very similar to Davina's I'll Be Tender, I'll Be Gentle. So here we go, let's swatch it next to it. I think on the eyes you would probably say that they give off a similar enough vibe that they could be dupes. So I'm going to go ahead and put that right there. Okay, the next shade, Nebula. This one again looks like it's probably got a lot of texture. This was really, in my opinion, a palette before its time because there just wasn't a whole lot of these. So I'm going to put it right there. We go. Okay, let me see what I've got in my collection. I think we would be looking at something like some of these Davina shades. Oh my goodness, that almost looks like another dupe. for Mercury. And it is, and your little dog too. I believe it's in the same set that I purchased it. So that'd be another dupe. Okay, let me wipe these off. I feel like this shade would look very similar to it. No, not really. Not really. That was Runts. What about the one next to it? That would probably be too pink, wouldn't it? Yeah, this is way too pinky. Definitely not anything like that. What about... It's a purple shade, so that blue one isn't going to fly very well. Okay, so this shade right here, this is Are You a Good Witch? And I would say it's not got the level of sparkle again. It seems to be a bit more darker and deeper in shade. Well, it's not really close at all. Now, in the viewfinder it doesn't look very close, but in person I could see it being similar. Nebula, we'll have to come back to you. Ooh, I wonder if I have anything in Terra Moons. About something like this. This is Mystic Moon Pie. I don't think this is going to be very similar at all. Oopsie. Yeah, we're comparing these two right here. And I just don't really see it, although that's some of the closest we've gotten. But it's, again, still not very close. We're looking for a certain level of sparkle. So that's about as close as we've gotten, but again, this has got a duochrome. This doesn't. It's got a lot of sparkle to it, and it doesn't have any pink. So I'm not sure we could find a dupe for that. But when you look at it on the eyes, it would behave very similar to these two, or what I would consider these two shades right here. That's how I would use them. Very similar to that shade. On the eyes, I would, use it more like a topper, I guess. And this one has a lot of green to it. There we go. Right there, that just has like that turquoisey, tealy green. And I already wiped off my hands, but you can see. Not gonna be a really, really close dupe. Galaxy. That looks very similar. I think Divina wouldn't be it. I don't think Divina would have a shade like that I have currently, because these are all duos and multi-chromes, I feel like. So I'm going to go ahead and put those away. And I'm also going to go ahead and put my Sydney Grace mattes, and I'm going to trade them in for the neutral shimmers, because I feel like I would have something similar to that. Ooh, maybe I have something similar in my Makeup Geek. Let's take a look. I feel like this shade might be similar. Yeah. As soon as so you can kind of see they're very similar. This one's a little bit shinier. It has a higher luster than this one, but I feel like you could achieve the same color effect, just maybe not quite as shimmery. And that is the shade Luna. Sydney Grace might have a better formula match. So let me go ahead and see if I can find something in Sydney Grace. Definitely think we're going to find something here. So again, we're matching to this top one. That's a little bit too orange, but that was the shade. Blushed. And then there's Paris. That'd be pretty close. Still not as close as the Makeup Geek shadow. And still really not the same in luster either. These are still fairly dulled down. Let's try this one. Again, this is more of a pink. These are more peachy, coppery tones, so not quite. I think I'm going to stay with the Makeup Geek one. That was as close as we were going to get, so I don't think we're going to have to worry about any of these other ones. So the next one is going to be Supermoon, or we could do Libra. I had grabbed a couple of shades out of my collection. Ooh, you know what? I didn't even think about. I grabbed this single opal. And is it similar? Not really. But it's similar in luster. That would be the similarities, is the luster. So this level of shine, but it doesn't quite have that rosy pink tone that we're looking for. So nice try. But it could dupe. I mean, like, I think I would be happy with either or. I would probably go ahead and go with Makeup Geeks just because I think more of you guys have that shadow. But nonetheless, I think either one would achieve a very beautiful look on the eyelid. And it's an alternative, not a dupe. So this is going to be Supermoon. This reminds me of Bailey's Bliss. This reminds me of, like, I think it's Bailey's Bliss, one of these. Yeah, this one right here. It's a little bit more opaque, but I think this is, it's either Bailey's Bliss or Milk and Cookies. I'll tell you here in just a minute. It's Bailey's Bliss. So I think that one's going to be as close. And yet this is going to not be a topper shade, whereas this one is, because I can look down at it from here and it doesn't look like there's any shadow, but yet there's an iridescent reflect. So without getting into like the extreme multi-chromy iridescent shifts, we could take a look at this. It's fairly similar. That was Island. Ooh, that's pretty. That is like way too much shift. I would say I would go with Island. Ooh, actually. Those two. In the viewfinder though, Bailey's Bliss is what honestly gives it the most. Ooh, I bet you anything my Kava. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take that one out. I'm going to go ahead and swatch it real quick. This is going to have a yellow undertone. And then this one has kind of that purple shade. I wonder, ooh, I think my Fairy Tale Forest palette might actually contain, this has that yellow undertone. Whereas I think the Fairy Tale Forest might have that pink undertone. So I'm going to go ahead and grab it really quick. Okay, so I want to go ahead and swatch from the Fairy Tale Forest this shade right here, which is North Star. And then I'm going to swatch Supermoon. And I think you can agree that this is like an icy purple, whereas this is like an icy champagne. And I don't really, ooh, here's something. Ooh, you don't say. So this is from the Natasha Denona Coral palette, and it is Abalone, and it's a duochrome. It is definitely not as icy. It's It's definitely not as icy, but it does kind of give the same vibe. I just don't think I would use them the same way. I would use this over like a light champagne color, and I would use this almost by itself over like a dark shadow. So I don't think that's going to work. Yeah, I'm not really seeing, you know, anything that's, see, and this is so white, you know, actually. And I know that makeup you can see, but it's, you can see it doesn't look very translucent. It's very opaque. So I think I'm gonna have to go with Bailey's Bliss, because even though it's got opacity to it, it's the closest shadow match, tone, you know, reflection and all that good jazz. So I think I'm gonna go with that for now. And you guys can probably hear the dryer going. I'm doing laundry at the same time. Let's have some fun with this shadow here, Supernova. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a swatch going. Right there. Okay, that's Supernova. All right, the first one that I want to swatch is Thank You Next. I think this one might be the closest. This has more copper. This is definitely much finer in formula. But when I look at it at an angle, you can kind of see the similarities. I mean, it's a ColourPop shadow, so I don't know if this one would be very close. No, I don't think so. And then I've got this shade here, which is Butterly, or Butterfly. I think it's going to be more pink and less red, but I think it would serve well as a good dupe shade. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and they definitely wouldn't be used the same way either. I wouldn't fathom using this shadow the same way I would use this shadow. This would almost like go over as a topper, and this one would be kind of like a standalone shade. So I don't think that's going to work. I think the Thank You Next from ColourPop is going to be the closest to duping that vibe, unless I went to something like Divina, maybe? I think Divina would give a very close... Okay, so I'm going to use this shade right here. Oh yeah, definitely. This one is more pink and this one is definitely more red, but fairly similar. And they would be used in the same manner. That was the shade Nacarat, so that might be an option. Then we've got this one, which is Magellanic. It'll be hard to get the shifts. This one's much more, that one's much more fuchsia, magenta than this one. Yeah, I still think the Thank You Next is got the same duochrome shift, got the same, pretty much everything. This is a higher luster than the Thank You Next, but I feel like if you built it up, it would be very, very similar in formula. There's also Cygnus, which I feel like it's got such a high luster. Ooh, there we go. It's quite a bit of a higher luster, but again, it kind of gives that same vibe. That pink, and then when you look at it head on, there's a copper base. That's nice. So Cygnus might be an alternative as well. I didn't think I was going to have any problems with this particular shadow. I thought I would have some problems with these up here, however. Let's look at Libra real quick. I've got some Coastal Scent shadows that I'm certain will not be at all very close in performance. I'm going to swatch on my left to give my right hand a break just for a little bit. Here's going to be Libra. Are we even getting in focus here? There we go. Okay. And I have Violetville, which is a purple. And I feel like it's too cool toned to fit this vibe. And also antique lilac, I don't think it's gonna work either. Oh, yeah, maybe. It doesn't even really swatch. Yeah. This is probably closer to this one, but it's definitely not a very good formula. Let's see what I got in my colored mattes for Sydney Grace. Oh, I think I already see it right here, folks. This is Haven or Heaven? Haven. Oops. Oh, and it swatches even worse than the Coastal Scents does. Oh, look at that. The similarities are just like unparalleled. But this is such a dry formula compared to that Huda formula. It's almost as if like the shadow looks like it's been... I don't know if you guys can see that or not. It's very similar though. I don't think anything else... No, that's definitely not. Or this would be like a gray shadow. Yeah, that definitely wouldn't be close at all. Didn't I already scuff this puppy? Oh Lord. This shadow right here, Cosmic. I'm interested to see what I have for it. That's again another, it's so high in luster. I just don't know what I could find that would be that high in luster. With this shade, this is Spring Fling. This is a duochrome. I would not use, I don't know that I would use these similarly. Oh wow, look at how close they are though. This one's a little more orange and that one's like a true baby pink. That's pretty close. On camera they look very similar because the lights are blowing it out, but in person if you turn to the side, this one's more orangey and this one is definitely staying true to that like baby pink. Let me see if I can get it to see it now. See it? That's more orange and that's more of that true baby pink. But that's because this has like that duochrome vibe to it. And I don't think there's any other shades that are like that pink. This one. But again, it's got that like white base to it. I know that I've got Makeup Geek like all the way down on the bottom, but I do have this shade. This shade right here is Whimsical. And like how close, that's that baby pink that we're after. But it has more opacity and also the luster in it is not nearly as shiny as this one. I think it's going to have to be Spring Fling. See that? That just doesn't, it just doesn't work. I wonder if something like this would work. Nope, that's Peach. It definitely does have some texture to it. It definitely has some texture. You can see it. It's very pretty. I think I'd have to go with the Springtime or Spring Fling. That would have to be it. Okay, really the only other ones that we have are Gold Glitch. I kind of think is another topper shade. And I could be wrong, but it kind of feels like it's another one of those topper shades. And that one is, again, it's got that almost white base to it. What about 20 something? Would that be? Oh my goodness. Is that similar? No, not even a little bit. It's the same peachy orangey vibe, but this one has, again, kind of that almost like a topper. This is too coral. Yeah, that's too pinky. Is there anything else in my Fairy Tale Forest palette that would give off that vibe? Ooh, I'm seeing it. Is it this one? Is it this one down here? Which would be Folklore. Yes. Okay, this one has a higher amount of luster again. I wonder if this one or this one would work. No, it's too dark. Same way with this one. That's too dark as well. I think it would have to be this shade right here. Believe it or not, if you look at this palette right here and you look at some of the shades, the neutrals, a lot of them mimic one another. So if you had the Fairy Tale Forest, you'd be in luck. Now, let me just go ahead and give you like an example. There's the emerald green, and then here's, what is that, Mercury or something like that? You wouldn't really be the same as far as that goes, but it would give you a similar vibe. Then there's like a darker orange with, and that's like a lighter peach. This is like the grungier version of this palette, in my opinion. Maybe, I don't know. I can see it though. So yeah, I pulled out the Natasha Denona Coral palette thinking maybe there would be some shades in there. I didn't really see anything. And then of course I pulled out some, so very similar shadows would be formula-wise ColourPop, believe it or not. Believe it or not, ColourPop would be very similar. And for the mattes, I actually think something like the Lorac formula is very similar if you can find the warm tones for it. Sydney Grace, not so much. But again, I was going after Sydney Grace's, you know, harder to formulate shadows in comparison. Like the purple, you know, that would put any brand under the radar for that. So let me see really quick. If I pulled this orange shade out here, and I swatched it, and then I swatched it against this Utopia shade, like what's the difference? It's a little bit darker in hue, excuse me, it's a little bit darker in hue, but it's similar vibes. So if you had the coral palette, you kind of have this part right in here. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's the matte. The darker matte might be this brown. This red with that duochrome kind of gives you that vibe. Some of the, like this shimmer kind of mimics this peachy tone right here. You know, just, it's the vibe. It kind of gives off that vibe. So I just wanted to see, like, do I own these shadows? And if I had to make the assessment, I would say no. And here's why. I think, well, let me start a new chapter. Let me wipe this off really quick and then we'll start a new chapter. Okay, so we're kind of asking the question, do I already own these shadows? And my answer would probably be no. This was rather difficult to find dupe shades for. Now, for as far as the shadows go, yeah, I think we see some similarities in colors. We don't see very many similarities in formula. So I purchased this from Sephora for $33.50. I got it shipped to me for free. I used code free ship. And so I only paid, I think, $35 total. $35 in Singlesville doesn't get you very far. I'm not sure if you know this or not, but some of Divina's and Terra Moon's shadows are like $13 a piece. So 3 shadows later and you still would not even have close to the vibes of this palette. Now, if we don't take into consideration shadow for shadow, what I own, you know, already versus what I just purchased, I would say I have the vibes covered. I definitely do. This shade right here would pass in my world. This wouldn't, I wouldn't use this shade as far as a dupe. I would use my Sparks. I would use, you know, something else a little bit more topperish, because that's what this shade is supposed to be, and this is opaque. Oopsie. This is opaque, and it's just not the same. It's not used for the same thing, and so I would actually switch that one out. But for color story purposes, they're very, very close. Okay, so in that regards, I feel like we have them. Now, I think this duochrome, I duped it over a couple of times for you, or maybe not duped it, but I definitely got very close. What kind of worries me is that this is a formula from Italy, and ColourPop's made in the United States, and ColourPop for $4.50 gives you the same formula as this shade Supernova right here. So that's kind of something that I found interesting. This shade right here, I didn't even bother, but I would guess, yeah. So if I had to dupe those off, I would probably do something like Makeup Geek's Grandstand, or even this shade right here, which is from Huda Beauty Bohemian. This is my dupe palette for the rose quartz, and then I substituted out some more shimmers because I wanted to keep it like a really, really light shadow. Plus I used this brown, it was Gimme the Dirt, and I used it for something else, so I just went ahead and put that in there. I really think this is a neat palette. I really do. If I didn't own single eyeshadows to begin with, this would be a palette I would probably aspire to own from Huda Beauty. However, owning these single shadows and getting this much use out of it, like I've basically panned this Terra Moons shade. And this shade too, this is Gingerbread from Luxie. These shadows are so incredibly gorgeous. I just think they're so incredibly gorgeous, and they're so full of texture and life. You know, Skyla from Divina is so gorgeous, and this Terra Moons shade, Terra Borealis, is really, really, really quite unique as well. I would, even though I own this palette, I would not own it at full price. I was only willing to give half price for it because I have this perceived notion of how much I think a palette is worth, and then I go from there. And that's what I do. And if it goes on sale for that price, then I'll pick it up. I think though in the future, doing assignments like this or kind of doing projects like this really just shows me that your single shadow collection can go above and beyond what a palette can offer you. If you are somebody who travels, or you like to keep things complete all in one little space and organized and, you know, put together, then owning this palette might be for you. But for me, I prefer to own the single shadows. So I hope that we can answer the question, you know, it's just not as easy to say like, oh, I already own these shadows, because each of Huda's shadows takes into consideration a formulation, and same way with, you know, Divina and Luxie and all the other brands that I use, even as far down as ColourPop. However, I'm really glad I own the palette. It'll be nice to travel with. It comes with a nice sturdy mirror, and I'm very, very glad that I own this palette, but I am also really glad that I didn't pay full price for the Rose Quartz palette, and this was a really, really nice little, you know, experiment or project for me to work on, just to kind of see whether or not it actually works. So let me go ahead and just give you guys some swatches really quick of my dupe shades, and then I will swatch on the other arm, the other, you know, from the, oh boy, this is just beautiful. And I don't even think that you're capturing the entire essence of this. This is such a dry formula. Let me get a nice juicy swatch for you. That's pretty good. And then lastly, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys Thank You Next by ColourPop, which I think this was the closest in dupe. So now let's go ahead and swatch the other arm and give you guys the other ones. Let me see if I can even remember. This one is Ultraviolet. This is Nebula, which I think this one is really, truly, it's definitely glittery. If I had to do this over again, I would actually choose Constellation from Makeup Geek. And it is a blue sparkler. It's got glitter in it. And then Mercury. And then I think I did, what, Galaxy? Yeah. These shades are just swatching so effortlessly, though. That's the kicker. I'm going to give you one more swatch of that. There we go. And then this shade. And did I have the gold glitch? Nope, I didn't. So there you go. Those are the dupe shades on this arm. And then on the watch-sided arm is the Mercury Retrograde. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode, guys. I can't wait to see you in my next video. Bye!